We here at Gallup have just updated our annual review of how Americans see countries around the world. And let's look at the results. We've been asking about some of these questions for many years, others just more recently. But we can tell you that there's a set of countries that Americans are very positive about at one extreme, and a set that Americans are very negative about at the other extreme. To begin with, let's look at the good news first. Here are 4 countries where Americans have 80% or higher favorable ratings. Canada, Great Britain, Germany, and Japan. That's interesting. 2 of these countries are English-speaking, and 2 of the countries are the Allies' opponents in World War II. But whatever, here we are many years after World War II, and Germany and Great Britain are among the top 4 countries that Americans like the most, along with our neighbors to the north, Canada and Great Britain. Now let's go to the bottom of the list. At the very bottom is Iran. Only 9% of Americans have a favorable opinion of that country. Other countries that have 20% or lower favorable ratings include North Korea, Pakistan, Syria, the Palestinian Authority, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. A lot of those aren't surprising, at least if you've been following our ratings, because they've been negative for many, many years. And then there's a group of countries that are kind of in the middle. There are 3 countries here that are above water, in the sense that more Americans have favorable opinions of these countries than unfavorable, and they are France, India, and Israel. And then here's a series of countries that are kind of in the middle, but they're underwater, in the sense that Americans tilt at least slightly more negative than positively about that list in front of you: Mexico, Russia, China, Venezuela, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Cuba. There's certainly been some changes in views of these countries over the year. Let me take one example: France. Americans have always liked France, but boy, back there in 2003, 2004, when the leaders of France did not go along with U.S. plans for the invasion of Iraq, Americans' ratings of that country plummeted all the way down to as low as 34% favorable in 2003. It had been as high as 74% back in the early 90s. Now, however, France is back in the relative good graces of Americans, back up to 73%, so their slight back in 2003 has been forgotten. What about Egypt? Well, Americans used to be very positive about Egypt. We had 58% favorable ratings as recently as 2010. In fact, we had 66% favorable ratings for Egypt back in 1991, but look at it now, it's down to 40%. So with the turmoil in that country that we've been seeing more recently, Americans' valuations have dropped down. What about Pakistan? Well, that's a country that Americans were at least somewhat more favorable to historically, 41% favorable rating back in 2005. Now, again, with everything that's going on in that part of the world, Americans' ratings of Pakistan are down to 14%. There have been some other changes in these ratings over the years. They go up and down depending on what's happening, and we'll have a complete analysis for you here at Gallup.com. But at the moment, this is a quick overview of those countries around the world that Americans like the most and those they like the least. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.